All right. Thank you, everybody. Today, I'm John Bellameric. I'll be talking about production readiness. So what is it? So this is a new sub-project that we've started in SIG architecture. And the goal, it's a project focused on production readiness, which means ensuring that features are ready as they go through the stages of alpha, beta, GA. There's different criteria for what we consider production ready. I'll get into that in a little more in just a minute. As I said, the goals of the sub-project are to define these criteria. We've also are planning to build a review gate and process for features as they move through this. This is really a program that we're just starting. It's kind of in the initial pilot phases. It's not like a new requirement that's coming really soon, but our goal is that at some point this will be a new set of reviews, sort of like we have to do API reviews sometimes, that we'll have to do production readiness review for different features as they move forward. To make it actually happen, we're trying to avoid any kind of new tooling and use existing PROW tooling to try and simplify it as much as possible. Another non-goal is to define these things in the context of different ways of deploying Kubernetes. So some people deploy, on-prem, some people deploy in the cloud, some people deploy on the edge, and the kind of things that we want to talk about in production readiness aren't really going to get into those different deployment models. We're just going to focus very closely on the sort of universal things that are necessary to make sure the quality is high. So why are we doing this, and why are we doing it now? Kubernetes has been around now for a few years, and it's grown dramatically, and it's grown organically, meaning we've had people adding the things that they see as needed functionality and needed features over time, but it's an open source project that has, somewhat chaotic, as you might expect of any open source project. So we did introduce this concept of K8s, and as Paris showed earlier, K8s are doing very well. Everybody's using them, they're great, but they're actually written by the people writing the code usually, and they're reviewed by the people who are interested in writing the code, and there's the people who actually run clusters in production don't necessarily see those or review them early enough or ever, and so that means that those people aren't necessarily represented, and we get oversights, things that really would make their lives easier that get missed or left out or not looked at. So that's really the goal or the motivation for this project. So what do we mean by production ready? Really, it comes down to these core things. So observable. So means that you deploy some feature out there, say some new resource type, and it's got a controller and it actuates some behavior, and we want to make sure that if we roll this out that it's actually working. We want metrics to see that there aren't failures. We want to know that people are using it. If you're operating a cluster and nobody's using some feature, then you'd like to know that, or if a lot of people are, because it can affect how you do your upgrades and things like that. So we also want to document what reasonable SLOs should be expected from that service level objectives should be expected from a given feature. It needs to be supportable. There needs to be a playbook. And the K8s today sort of serve as a playbook, but they don't have sections like, how do you troubleshoot this feature? What are the important logs to look at if something's going wrong? How do you even know if something's going wrong? What are the failure modes? So all of that needs to be documented. So that's part of production ready. It's not always a thing you need different in the code. All of this may be there. It's not documented. It's not ready for people to take out there and use and be able to support. And we also want to examine whether it's going to have some unexpected impact on scalability. So there's a set of questions that come out of this that try to surface any problems that might occur. Finally, we want to know that it can be disabled when it's a pre-GA feature, so you're properly implementing your feature gates, and that when you actually turn it off, like say it's been running in production for a week and then you find it's causing problems, you turn it off, that's not going to cause its own problems by turning it off. So somebody has to actually ask those questions and examine that. And even for things that are post-GA, we don't require a feature gate for that. Once it's GA, the feature gate's on and removed, but you should be able to roll back, right? You should be able to roll back to an earlier version if you're causing massive damage somehow to your service and production. So we want to make sure that the kind of changes that are implemented when you deploy this feature aren't irreversible in the sense of not being able to roll back. So what are we doing as part of this sub-project? Well, the first thing we're developing a questionnaire, a production readiness questionnaire. It's basically, if you've read the SRE book or something from Google, or it's similar to things done internally at Google and other places, is sort of like ask these questions of the people writing the software. How do you do those? How do you troubleshoot this in a live situation, and what should we look for? We're also developing a review process to try to enforce that. So the idea here is, I think I talk about it later. The idea here is to trigger sets of reviews based upon graduation from different phases. We're doing in order to make sure that this is effective and useful and that we ask the right questions, we are doing some sort of field research around what are the kinds of problems people have experienced in production. Have we seen cascading failures? Have we seen other kinds of, what's the pain for operators right now, so that we can make sure that whatever we actually, the questions we ask actually surface the kind of issues that people have experienced in real life. We're also doing a post-mortem of existing features. So one that people have brought up is cron job. So cron job's been stuck in beta for a long time, and there were a lot of issues with cron job in production. And it's a big question of, okay, some of those were caused by bugs. So would this process even surface that? Maybe we can't surface everything, but let's at least see what we can do. So we want to look at all these other features and experiences people have had in the past and see if we're asking the right questions to surface and avoid those kind of problems. Finally, we do understand that more review gates is painful, and so we want to keep it as lightweight as possible. Speaking of review gates, when does all this start? So we've actually started this process in a pilot phase in 1.17. We have a handful of KEPs that we're sort of voluntarily going through with the authors having them answer a set of questions. It's very much just a pilot phase. Originally, I'd hoped that we would be able to move faster and get something in 1.18 that has some teeth, but I don't think that's realistic at this point. So likely we'll pilot through 1.18, and then I would hope to target in 1.19 that we have some kind of at least manual process, if not any tooling. So how does it work? Today, as I said, it's a pilot. So that means that if you have a KEP or a feature that you're either new, wanting to go to alpha, or you're wanting to advance from alpha to beta to GA, then we would ask that if you're willing to be a guinea pig, you come to us at this production readiness review team, and we would work with you to answer the questions in the questionnaire, which is, I'll have a reference to it later. And you can just answer those directly in the KEP. From there, we would help review your answers to that question, make sure that they're, hopefully provide feedback that would direct you to maybe do things a little bit differently. In the future, we want to have tooling that will trigger on a PR that's graduating, that's either creating a new alpha API or graduating an API from alpha to beta from GA. And the idea is that similar to how even actually we do in conformance, one of the ways we do it in conformance is there's a text file where a line is added, and only a certain set of people have the right to approve that. And so we're thinking a similar kind of tooling, but part of the pilot program is to figure out exactly how we want to do that. Again, intended to be lightweight. We don't want a sort of centralized production readiness review team that everything has to go through. With API reviews, we have to do that, and we know that can become a bottleneck. So as much as possible, as we have each of these sections in the questionnaire, and I can probably bring it up later, we'd like individual SIGs to probably take responsibility for individual sections there. So SIG scalability, for example, has a set of questions that they've presented, and as the reviews would happen, they would be the ones that would approve those specific answers in any given KEP. So how can you help this process move forward so that we can have a better Kubernetes in the future that's more supportable and makes operators' lives easier? The first thing you could do is volunteer your experiences. As I mentioned, part of this is understanding and surveying the landscape to see what kind of pain people have been through. So if you have horror stories or not so horrible stories, but that are real operational challenges, talk to Valerie here, or Jorge, they're both working on our sort of field research of this team, and I'm sure they would love to hear from you. There'll be a survey that goes out. They're putting together like a Google Doc, a Google form that will go out to probably the dev mailing list and maybe the users mailing list. So if you see that and you've got something to contribute, add to it. But if you want to do more, they're also working on a more one-on-one interview type of format where we can get more in-depth. So that should be over the next month or two, I would guess. They'll have something there for that. You can also volunteer to run your feature through the pilot process. The questionnaire is out there on the community site already. You can go in, and all you need to do is copy that into your KEP and answer the questions right there in your KEP and submit a PR and tag one of us. I guess I should probably set up a GitHub team for it. We also are looking for feedback on that questionnaire. So anything you can contribute there would be great. Really, that's it. Here's some references. Oops. Actually, that's great. Here's some references on that slide. I don't know if I can scroll. Yeah. But to give you an example, here's the kind of questions we're talking about that we would be asking KEP authors to answer. The goal really is that this shouldn't take long. This should be like, if you're writing this feature, you probably either know answers to these things or you should know answers to these things. So if it does take long, it's actually doing its job to make you think about it. But nonetheless, in general, most of them should be pretty easy to answer. How do I go back? I can't even see my... So that's really it. Next would just be Q&A.
If you guys have any questions, I have the mic. So raise your hand nice and high, and I will bring it to you.
All right, so you're all going to go right after this, and you're going to go and start answering these questions for your KEPs, right? Awesome. Okay, well, if there's no questions, then it's a short session. All right, thank you.